What is up, guys? Coop here, and today we're going to be talking about allied races, more specifically 5 races that will be joining the Alliance. Now, this is going to be a podcast-based format, so it's perfect for people that would just want to play games and have the sound in the background, as there will not be many pictures and images and video that will be actually shown in this sort of format. Today, we're just going to be basically basing off of facts and different aspects of why these races will be joining the Alliance. Now, for you Horde players, have no fear, there will be a part 2 coming up very soon, and also a neutral base race 1, where we'll find out ones that are neutral and can actually join both factions that are both predominant in the lore. So, without further ado, I say let's jump into the first race. The first one is the Fir Bog. The Fir Bog is a sort of bear-based race. They have very much a lot of shamanistic and druid sort of aesthetic to them. Their culture's kind of sort of surrounded about with that. Now, the reason I say that these guys would join the Alliance is they are already partners up with the Night Elves. The Night Elves and them worked heavily close hand in hand when doing the War of the Ancients. And also they have helped out multiple ways of helping out in Ashenvale. Ashenvale, predominantly with all the sort of things with the Horde going on, with chopping down the trees during Garrosh's sort of invasion of that area, it was up to sort of the Fir Bog and the Night Elves and the heroes to sort of take back that land and fight back. And the Fir Bogs were obviously very upset with the Horde at that point as well. So, two of the main reasons why they would join. Now, if we actually were to look at them as a playable race, what sort of classes would they have? Well, they already have a lot of good classes that already fit the theme of what is going on. They have hunters, shamans, mages, warriors, and druids. All these different types. And also priests. I forgot to mention that as well. So, one of the things that I could see this actually being a realistic race is druids. Right now, the Alliance is down 2 druids compared to the Horde. If you think about it, you know, the Horde has now Tauren, High Mountain Tauren, and now the Trolls and another troll race that all have sort of druidism. And then when you look at the Alliance, we have our Night Elves and everything, but there's not many other races out there besides the Worgen. So we are in need of at least one more race for Druid. So I think the Fir Bogs would definitely fit. Now, there would be a little bit more awkwardness to it because, you know, they're already bears, so them going to bear form, does that just make them into a bigger bear? Like, what goes on there? And also trying to figure out all the different other forms that they would have. Like, would we have a rain bear? Like, that would be weird. So, that's one of the negatives as well. Another negative is the armor. The armor would have to be kind of redone. The skeleton that they use doesn't specifically have a lot of armors that they could transfer over. So when kind of figuring that out, you have to keep in mind sort of all these different aspects of development time and things of that nature. But this is a very strong race with a lot of lore significance of reasons why that they would actually have it join the Alliance. So that's one of the ones I wanted to look at. Now another one is Centaurs. Centaurs, I know they're very irrelevant at this time. A lot of zones don't even have Centaurs anymore, but they do have a good long history and reasons why that they would join the Alliance. Now, I know that there's a lot of animalistic sort of races that I'm mentioning here, but keep in mind that these guys actually have lore significance of why they would join the Alliance. First part is they are sort of the offspring of Cenarius. Cenarius obviously is very much close to the Night Elves and Malfurion, so having these sort of child of Cenarius would be very closely to what we would want to join the Alliance. Now, on top of it, they have been known in their long forgotten past of actually hunting down the Tauren. The Tauren used to actually run away from them or would fight back against them constantly when they were first kind of getting their sort of grounds together. Now, eventually the Horde did unite and they fought back against the Centaurs, pushed them back into some of the more darker slums of Kalmandor, I would say, such as Desolace. And then after the Alliance and Horde sort of campaigns all across the different zones, it kind of eradicated much of the factions out there. Now, there were a few factions that were left. Desolace definitely had a whole quest line where the Horde and Alliance both help out with uniting the tribes. Now, you might be still saying, why would they join the Alliance afterwards? Well, keep in mind the history of them hating the Tauren. The Tauren and the Horde basically eradicated them and pushed them back into some of the worst areas of all time. that's not a thing that is easy to forget. I think with the Horde and Alliance side that they kind of ran out of time, so they kind of made it into a story for both people. But it definitely makes a lot more sense that they would join the Alliance, with them being sort of the offspring of Cenarius. And now let's actually dive into some of the classes here. So some of the classes that they have is another Druid-based race, Warrior, Hunter, Warlock, Shaman, Necromancer, which could, be transferred into sort of Death Knights. And then they have a few other little classes, but they're basically all warrior based. So when you actually look at this, Druid actually is a really good choice for them. It makes sense. It adds that Druid thing that we need for our alliance. Having warrior, it's a nice staple on there. Warlocks would add another class for us to have that can be warlocks. Shamans, which is also really nice. Now, I don't know if they would ever do the Death Knight thing, but they were around during the sort of Wrath of the Lich King era, so it would actually make sense that they would be easily turned into a Undead Knight. Now, let's actually talk about the negatives here. One, armor, one of the biggest ones out there. The skeleton for this has no real armor. Most of them are already shirtless, so not a single drop of armor has ever been put on them. 2, their model is terrible, and 3, with the armor, is the whole, horse part. How do you cover that? Is it just the pants and the shoes of the armor, or is it around the hooves and the body? It'd be very hard to do that, and they'd have to put a lot of development time in, which I just don't think is going to actually happen. Now, another issue with this is they just don't have a real solid reason to join the Alliance, and they're also very much close to extinction. It just obviously they kind of left them there. However, there is hope though, because when Warlords of Draenor was originally being made, back before when they were first coming up with concepts, they came up with Garrosh having sort of a savage horde with different types of kobolds and different types of centaurs and things of that nature. And so there's possibly some models or newer models that were in development beforehand, but we never have seen them up to this date. But nonetheless, it was a really solid race that I thought I would mention because of the lore significance. Now, I really tried to avoid looking at a bunch of animalistic races, especially because the Alliance could have a ton of them. Now, one of the biggest issues is them being kind of known as the fur pals. You have your druids, and you would have your worgen, and then you would have all these other animalistic races, and that could very much take away some of the themes of the Alliance. So I tried to look at different races, and I found an animal-based race that actually has more humanoid sort of aspects to it rather than the druidistic ones. So, and that one was the Genu. The Genu are already part of the Alliance. If you have not played Miss Pandaria, we ended up having them join us when we were fighting against the Horde in the Jade Forest, and during the assault on the sort of Jade statue. We ended up kind of marching into battle with these guys. We had a giant mighty nation of them, and they really helped us out, especially going forward. Now, they also have a variety of different races, such as warriors, priests, rogues, mages, shamans, monks, and they also have water speakers, which can be closely resembling that of a druid. Mainly sort of a restoration druid. However, I would say it's more shamanistic with their sort of healing and spell style. So it's kind of difficult to explain what exactly a water speaker is, but that's basically what I got out of the gist from seeing them in Pandaria. Now this one, they already have joined us. They already have a lot to play. I think it'd be kind of cool to have more passive-based characters in the Alliance to kind of help us out with more calm solutions to things. And it would give us a reason to go back to Pandaria for maybe a scenario or something like that. They can do a phased area for a leveling, especially because the allied races seem to have an initial cutscene, a sort of leveling up zone, and then sort of a way out. That seems to be the consistent thing for each of the different allied races that are joining the Horde and Alliance. So I think that's going to be very important, especially going forward. They do have a variety of different classes that are very interesting. However, I think one of the only negatives I really have for them is that they just don't have enough lore reason or lore writing that could actually go into the game that would be really good. It just feels like they would just be a race that kind of joins the Alliance and then doesn't really do anything lore significant wise. You would never see them in any of the big stories or big discussions or anything. it seems like that was what would kind of happen from there. Now, also, another good plus is that they have most of the armor in World of Warcraft actually is in their skeleton or their sort of model. So it's easy to transfer because they actually have the Night Elf model. If you actually look at their armor and sort of body and how it's shaped like a Night Elf because they originally used the Night Elf model. Now, it's got a few other little tweaks to it, but it's basically very easy for them to transfer armor into it. It'd be so easy, in fact, that I could see them totally doing this in like sort of a re-catch up to Pandaria scenario during Battle for Azeroth. Be very simple, very easy, and in general, they're a very solid race to actually join the Alliance. Now the next one, I tried to look very deep and thought, and I couldn't really find many other races in sort of Azeroth that really fit the theme, but I started to look elsewhere, and I found one that I thought was pretty interesting, and I kind of thought of some giant what-if scenarios for this, and that is the Batani. Now you're probably wondering, who the hell are the Batani? And a lot of people probably forget who this race actually is, but in Warlords of Draenor, they were the plant people. They came from the primals, the sort of plant aspects that were out there, and they're a very interesting race. I looked at them and I tried to figure out exactly what they were or what they can do. There wasn't as much information that we know of. Obviously these guys could be druids, obviously these guys could be warriors and other different aspects there, but I noticed that they had a kind of a cool aesthetic, and I always thought about it, and I was like, Guild Wars 2 kind of has these plant people, and I think that'd be kind of an interesting race to throw into the Alliance. Especially with all the Night Elves and the Druidism and everything. I think it'd be really cool to add them in the mix. Not to mention with their kind of shamanistic values as well. We could actually learn a lot from them, especially having more of a shamanistic based character rather than the orcs and the sort of trolls and everything else that the Horde gets. I thought that it would add some interesting storytelling elements. Then I started to dive a little deeper, and I thought, what would this race actually bring to the fray? And then I remembered they actually have a plague. And there's an image I'll bring up real quick of a orc that is affected by their plague. And I thought about this and I was like, what if we had a scenario where, you have Sylvanas and her plague, and then you have the Batani and their sort of plague, and it's like a plague battle, and it would just add a lot of really cool aspects to it. Like, just having Battle of the Plagues, it would add a lot of different quest themes that you could do. It'd be so awesome. And I was thinking about it, and I was just going through all these different scenarios. And now one of the biggest issues with these guys is obviously, one, their skeleton. Many different armors wouldn't be able to go in there. However, there are a lot of different cloth armors that already have been on their skeleton, and there's a few other like little leather ones and everything, so I think that they could easily be transferred over. It would just take a little bit more work compared to some of the other races. But one of the biggest things that I thought about was trying to figure out how we could get them from Draenor to Azeroth. And I actually looked into it a little bit more, and I was like, well, the Primals were sort of this plant-like race, and maybe the Titans or something had different sort of keepers and things that would watch over things. And I thought about Eonar and how she was one of the last remaining Titans, and she was going around all over the place, making different sanctuaries and different sort of plant-based things to help out with growth and life and things. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, in the raid we sort of go into one of her sanctuaries. Maybe there's more sanctuaries, or maybe she's got more guardians that are hidden around in Azeroth. And I thought about that, and I said this would be a really easy way to bring them into the fray. So that's one of the scenarios I was thinking about. But I think it's very interesting that they have like a sort of plague, and that plague would make it really cool storytelling aspect of, the Alliance and having them deal with their own version of the plague, similar to how Garrosh dealt with Sylvanas and their plague. And it just adds a lot of different aspects there that were really cool, and I think that'd be really interesting to go forward with. Not to mention with the Emerald Nightmare, you could have these guys be corrupted and go against it, kind of stealing a little bit from what Guild Wars 2 did, with the plant people turning evil, but I think that would add a lot of interesting story element to the fray. So that is one I really highly suggest that I think would join the Alliance. Now the next one is one that is a crowd favorite. Not many people would expect this one to be a Alliance-based one, but I digress. I think this one a lot of people think are neutral. I don't think they are. I think they're actually going to be more for the Alliance, and that is the good old Ethereals. Now, before I get those negative comments about how they're neutral and how not all of them are for the Alliance, let me talk a little bit more about what is going on with this. So one of the things that the Ethereals are all about is light and dark. A lot of them nowadays are, have either been to their void sort of taken over planet by a void lord, and a lot of them have retreated. A lot of them are priests and sort of paladins, and then some of the ones that sort of ran away are, or well, not run away, but are hunting, are shadow-based ones. So you have that light and dark theme, and that's very important for what I'm going to be talking about. So one of the things that a lot of people forget is that the actual whole little like mini cartel loosely goes with the Alliance, or more specifically the Centaur, and that faction was the I think it's called the Consortium or Consortium. It's basically a sort of a cartel that follows with the Centaur, which are basically followers of Adal, and Adal is a Naru. So what does the followers of a Naru sound like? The Lightforge. So having the Lightforge join the Alliance would make these guys definitely want to join the Alliance as well. Now, let's keep in mind the other side of the spectrum. You have Locust Walker. Locust Walker is a predominantly known ethereal who is helping out Illyria and the Void Elves and the followers of the Void. So you have that whole Void faction also joining. Two valid factions that have ethereals within it. Two of the strongest reasons why ethereals have run away or are hunting. You have the light and the dark of the two different factions. Have them come together and you have a giant faction of ethereals that could join the Alliance. And it makes so much more sense when you think about it. So with the Centaur, with the whole Lightforge, and then you have the whole Void side. I don't know if they have like a Void faction that joins the Void Elves, but whatever they would be called. So you have those two different sides in one. So that's why I think ethereals would actually join the Alliance. Anyways, this video was relatively a little bit longer than I expected. I tried to make it get around 10 minutes. It looks like we're kind of going over about 17 minutes, but I hope you guys do enjoy. I'm going to be doing one for the Horde as well. The Horde actually has a lot more different ones that I thought were a little bit more wide variety rather than the sort of druid and shamanistic ones. But I thought it was pretty interesting to actually dive in and look at. Now, if you guys do like this video, just be sure to like it down below and be sure to subscribe. We are trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of February. I think we can do it. I know we can do it actually, because we have managed to get up to 97 subscribers in just the last couple of weeks. So, and that's pretty damn impressive. I'm actually really happy about it. So, anyways, be sure to share this video if you guys actually did enjoy the content, and I will see you guys next time.